Hello, and welcome back to a series I haven't touched in a little while and try not to touch too often, but it seemed appropriate. This is another episode in what's tentatively called Rants and Raves. Why am I giving it this much of an intro? I don't know. I should just restart the video, but I'm going to keep pushing on because I'm trying to do this concisely and keep myself from overthinking this video and writing a script that I will never produce. Not like I have 20 of those already. Today I wanted to talk about something that has come up into my mind over the last 3 weeks and not left my mind, and it's only getting worse. I want to talk about the obsession with theater and cinema and the physical space of the theater as a place to watch a movie. Now, what I'm trying not to get into here is the many, many facets of this that maybe I'll address at another time. Things like the death of the author and artistic integrity and the nature of cinema as a synthesis of other mediums. Yeah. I'm trying to avoid most of that, but I'm going to touch on it a little bit because I want this specifically to be about movie theaters. And to some extent, it's going to get into cinematic integrity. There's a YouTube channel, which I'm not going to name, that I've been watching for many years now, that put out a video some weeks ago that has stuck in my mind because it seemed to me to be deeply misguided, but not entirely wrong. And it was talking about this idea of the end of the pandemic, which we're not there. It's getting... Yeah, anyway, the idea that people may be returning to the theater to watch movies again, and that the barriers to entry for that are being lifted, and once again giving praise to the necessity of a place like a movie theater. And this is not a new narrative I've heard. It's one I've heard oft repeated by all kinds of people, whether it's, hammy action film buffs or art house snobs or whatever. And these are topics I've talked about intermittently in this series, in my movies series, just in general gameplay. But the idea of how one experiences an art piece of any kind is something that I think is incredibly important, at least in the sense of it deserves interrogation on its own. What bothers me deeply about hearing this narrative of you gotta go see this in theaters, in whatever form that comes, is that to me, it almost always idealizes a situation where that is the right choice. And I strongly disagree with that. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that. One is just the nature of a theater. Now, a lot of the more modern takes on this and more, I'm going to air quote, in-depth takes on the theater situation, especially over the last 3 years as we've had to reconsider our relationship to public spaces. They will concede some of the problems. Obviously, in the last 2 years, it's become more obvious some of the concessions that need to be made. But even before that, some of the concessions are obvious. You have to be there with other people. You don't know who's going to be there. You don't know the state of the theater necessarily. You don't know if, what's going to happen because it's essentially still a public space. And those are all very true. However, I feel more often than not that when those things are brought up, they are essentially being lampshaded as a way of validating, oh, these are either non-issues or good things because they relate to how one experiences a theater. However, that seems to me to be completely incongruous to the core point that usually these videos or people who are just talking are making, which is usually that they have this platonic ideal of what a theater is, and they forget some of the fundamentals. A theater is not a theater is not a theater. You don't just go into any movie theater and have the same experience. And this is something that's rather personal to me for a variety of reasons, but in part because I had a variety of different cinema experiences as a kid, and even then, I felt like the arguments that I heard made for and against certain things were kind of invalid. I grew up in a relatively small town. We had one movie theater. It was a bad movie theater. It wasn't even a movie theater originally. The building used to be... I don't actually remember what it used to be. It used to be something else. The space was not suited to being a good movie theater. It was small. It had pillars in it. It had like a weird balcony. It had almost no slope to the seating. So it was very easy to get somebody's head in front of yours. All these other things that made it an imperfect movie theater. There were other theaters, more theaters in larger towns over. And then if you wanted to go further out, you could get, like when I was, in my early teens, they built a huge Cineplex, like one of the AMC type of things that was like brand new, the cushy seats. And I mean, obviously those places don't age very well because they get worn out pretty fast. But that was in some ways when some of those things, when that place came in, it gave a very different experience of a movie because the screens were bigger. You had this big slanted seating area where you weren't going to get people in front of your head. The sound quality was better, all these other things. So my point is there that just movie theaters really run the gamut in terms of their quality and the experience that you get. However, I want to be really specific here that one is not necessarily better than the other. There is no perfect cinema experience. There is the one you get. And that sounds weird out of context, but I'm going to come back around to it. Sometimes what you get is good because it's what you get, rather than the perfect, ideal viewing conditions. And to this point earlier about people making this argument that a cinema is an ideal place because it's the intended experience, seems deeply misguided because the intended experience could be anything. In some cases, the authorial intent of a filmmaker may be that you experience their film as uninterrupted as possible, like in a sensory deprivation chamber with nothing but the audio of their movie in your ears, in surround sound, and the visuals enveloping your vision. Maybe that's it. Or maybe their intention is that you enjoy it with people you know, or with strangers, or any of these things. But avoiding delving into problems of authorial intent and the author is dead and all these other things that I could go on a tangent on, that is irrelevant. And that gets to something that's been eating at me for more than 2 years now, which is an article that Martin Scorsese wrote for, was it Harper's Bazaar, I think, called Il Maestro, about Fellini. And this is an article that got circulated a lot and had a lot of takes. And I think that in some ways, Scorsese's takes on it are important, and in some ways they're right, and in some ways they are wrong. I'm not going to pick apart his article, but I think it is a key point for understanding the modern consumption of media. And I'm going to use that as a catch-all. In the article, he talks about the idea of content, and this dirty word of content, and how the delineation between a YouTube video and a TV show and a movie has been somehow tainted by the methods by which we consume them. And I don't entirely disagree. But I find that it is a deeply self-centered way of looking at a piece of art. Because cinema comes in all different flavors. And the way people choose to enjoy their cinema is as meaningful as the art that is made for them. By that, this is going to get rambly, isn't it? It already has been. What am I talking about? I'm not going to edit this. Sometimes the most memorable and meaningful experiences you can have with a piece of art are in the place and the time and with whom you experience them. Sometimes sitting in the back of a car watching a portable DVD player version of a film is the most memorable version of that film you'll ever see. That even if you saw the perfect version of it, the platonic ideal of its presentation, sometime else, the context in which you experienced the film can potentially be just as meaningful as anything else. And while I certainly have personal feelings about trying to get a somewhat ideal experience and setting yourself up for success in experiencing film or any other media, where you try and eliminate distractions and get a good quality of picture and sound. Sometimes what's meaningful is that context. Sometimes that means more to you, and trying to break apart an experience, a singular experience, a time when you experienced a piece of media from the place you were and who you were with and the mindset you were in at the time. And deferring to the ideal is dehumanizing, really, I think. It forgets all of the things about the viewer. It is an artistically centric viewpoint where you say that the art must exist in an idealized state, in an untouched state, and that it is the responsibility of the viewer to come to it with nothing. This got really rambly. I'm way off topic. And I think that's deeply wrong. I can think of so many times, and I'm sure you guys can too, where whether it's a movie or a piece of music or a book or a video game or anything, really any experience in your life, or if you try to divorce it from the context in which you had it, from where you were at the time, that even if it seems like that is a non-ideal condition in which you watched it, that is important to how you experienced it. And so saying that the movie theater, that your movie theater, the movie theater in which you theoretically watch every single one of the movies that you experience, is so important that it must survive no matter what, and that it is the aspiration of all cinephiles to consume all of their content in the idealized conditions, is deeply wrong-headed and really anti-human. I was intending to get more into the technical side of this, and I guess I will, but I've sort of gone off the deep end on this. The idea of the cinema as an ideal watching condition is also deeply wrong. Let's ignore for a moment, let's assume that the people you're with, or there's nobody with you, that you are purely looking at the technical state of the cinema, because that is usually what these wrong-headed arguments enthymematically consider to be the case. The cinemas come in all shapes and sizes, and the conditions of cinematic presentation are almost always suboptimal in one or many ways. If I had to guess, I think I've probably been in 40, somewhere between 30 and 50 movie theaters in my lifetime. Some of them one-offs, some of them many times. And there is not a single one where I can think of as idealized, even if I had been there alone. The technical aspects of the presentation matter a lot. And so when you talk about movies and you talk about the media of the cinema as a synthesis of storytelling and visual presentation and auditory presentation, there are so many flaws that are so frequent just in that, where whether it's a matter of the original media that was sent to a theater, whether that is in film form or in digital form, is in some way flawed, whether the encoding of the film in a digital form has an error in it, or is not edited quite right, or is mastered poorly, or the film print is flawed. That's all like failure point one. And then there's the cinema itself, where you have the projector or projectors, plural, when you get into the technical side of how you present a multi-hour film on film reels that have a limit to how big they can be. There is the marks on the film that show you how to switch, show the projectionist how to switch which reel is running and to sync them up, and the clarity of the lens on the projector, and the last time the backing, the panel, the projection panel in the projection room was cleaned, and whether the screen itself is flat, or if it's flawed, or if it's off color, or even I've had experiences where they didn't even like change the aspect ratio of the screen properly. And so part of the film is being projected onto drapes next to or above and below the screen because they just didn't bother to do it right. And then there's the audio side of things where I've been in probably the vast majority of movie theaters I've ever been in have had deeply broken audio where it's not tuned right, it's the gain's too high, the whatever, the mixing is bad in the original content, or after it's going through their audio processing. It's all an art to that. And so you're never going to get the idealized experience. And then there's just the matter of sitting in the space, where are you sitting at ground level? Are you somewhat elevated? Where is your actual eye line in relation to the screen? And that goes for the audio as well. Where are the speakers in the room? How are they hitting your ear? What are the internal reflections of the room? And how does the material and even the people in the room affect how the quality of the sound by the time it reaches you? All of these are incredibly important. And to pretend that any artist, any filmmaker has reasonable expectations that any of those things should be respected in order to get the right experience is so wrong. It's just, the production of art is about, from an artist's perspective, should only ever be about trying to get the artistic vision as accurately portrayed as possible. Because once you release art into the world, it's not yours anymore. It's somebody else's. The experience of experiencing art is something out of your control as an artist. You have to let it go. And for somebody like Scorsese, who has his ups and downs, and I've talked about him before, to so wrongheadedly pretend like he's got this deific vision of what cinema can be or should be, or how his content must be consumed is, I mean, it's exactly that. It's almost like recursive in its stupidity, because the very notion that one way of consuming it is wrong reflects upon him as an artist, or anyone as an artist, that they don't understand how their art is consumed. Now, this video that you're watching right now, I don't know how you're getting it. I don't know if you're watching it. I don't know if you're watching it at all. I don't think there's going to be any B-roll running on this. But I don't know how you're hearing it. Are you listening to it on YouTube? Is it on a phone? Is it on a laptop? Are you on a desktop computer? Is it on, do you have me in your home theater set up? How big is your home theater set up? These are all, I don't know how you will experience this, but the context in which you're doing it, the way in which you're doing it is yours. It's not mine. It's not mine to decide. I can do everything in my power, like having a good microphone and doing mastering after the fact, or editing or not editing, or whatever I want to do to try and make a product, a piece of content, just to piss people off, use the word, that is going to be consumed in a way that I hope it will be. I hope that my voice sounds good. I hope that there's not tons of background noise. I hope that my editing works. I hope that YouTube doesn't compress my audio too deeply and ruin the content as a result, since everything is processed after the fact. But I have no control over that. All I can do as a maker of something is to try and put it out into the world with the things that I have control over controlled. Everything else is beyond my control, and I can and will rage against the universe and say that it is not fair that my audio has to be compressed, and not fair that my video is compressed, and not fair that I can't ensure that the experience that my viewership has is idealized. But it's fundamentally a pointless endeavor. I have to let it go. And the same goes for the movies. This is the current era is not unique. It is easier than ever in many ways, not in all ways, to get movies. Let's focus on movies for now. It is easier than ever to get them, and it's easier than ever to get them in as high a quality as ever. Whether it's through streaming services or Blu-ray discs or whatever method to get it to you. There are more ways than ever to do that. And that means there's more variables than ever. And in all the same ways that a movie theater experience can be flawed, so can a home experience of any kind. Whether it's, as I mentioned, compression, whether it's stream buffering, the problems with your ISP, the quality of the monitor or the TV that you have. All of these things are present, but they're not new. The advent of recorded content, things like VHS and the recorded content wars of the like 70s and 80s, this is all just being rehashed in new ways. And my personal feeling from the consumption side of content is that I'd always like to get the best version of the experience I can. But I also have to, as a consumer, recognize that I am never going to get the perfect viewing experience. I could spend, few $1,000s or many hundreds of thousands of dollars building a home theater or something like that. But fundamentally, even if I was that rich, I'd still be living in a residential neighborhood where a dump truck could drive by and vibrate the room, and that would taint the experience. At least if you want to look at it that way. It would affect the experience. And so I think the best we can do from a consumption perspective is mentally settle ourselves to accept what we are about to experience. And the best that an artist can do is to create something and put it out into the world in a way that serves the intended delivery as well as possible without attempting to control it. Because whatever you want to call it, the entropy of the universe will inevitably mean that the consumption will never be ideal. So this video has gone way off the deep end. Theaters are not precious. Stop idealizing them. Especially in the modern technological age, the divide in quality between your local movie theater and what you could set up in your own home for a fairly reasonable price it's as close as it's ever been. And I would argue that in a lot of cases, some of the sacrifices made for doing it at home you make some sacrifices and you get some improvements. And I'm going to avoid delving into, man, that was the original intention of this fucking video, was to talk about how you could have your idealized experience at home. Buy a good quality TV or projector, set up a space where you can get a good experience, where you're comfortable. You know, make sure that whatever system you're using to watch your films, whether it's a console or a computer or you know, a streaming box or whatever, that's all technically set up as best as possible. And then just see where you find resistance in your own experience. And if you don't feel that, if you can watch a movie and not say, oh, there was this technical issue, then you know what? I think you're doing fine. I don't think anyone at that point has any right to say that you didn't make the full effort. Whatever you can afford, whatever is to you an experience that was valid, it is valid by virtue of it being your subjective experience. There is no objective experience of a movie. There is no objective experience of any media. And anyone who tells you otherwise is just wrong. So enjoy the things you enjoy and try and share them if you can. And don't shame people for wanting to watch a movie on their phone, even if it's not perfect. Sometimes you're having a rough day and all you want to do is lie in bed and watch a movie through the tinny mono speaker streamed at some low resolution on a 5-inch screen, 6-inch screen on your phone. Just let it be what it's going to be. Thank you guys for watching this video. I don't know why you did, but there it is. I've been the Social Solipsist. I'll see you guys next time.